Hey everybody, welcome once again to linuxhen.com YouTube channel. In today's video, we're going to talk about 14 important Python interview questions. So these are the most important questions that you could be asked in any of the interview. So without further ado, let's start. So before we start, I want to tell you something that there are different sorts of question in here. Some of them are theoretical and some of them, they require code and stuff. So we'll do both basically. All right. So let's start. The first question is that what is Python, and explain some of the benefits of the Python. All right. So the answer to this question is that Python is basically a programming language. Okay. And it has objects, it has threads, it has modules, it has exceptions, and it has basically the very salient feature that I would say, that feature is automatic memory management. All right. The benefits of Python, if you talk about, they are basically that it is very simple and easy to use. All right, it's not complicated at all. Python is portable, which means that on different platforms you don't need to write code again and again. Okay, you can use the same code. It is also extensible. It has built-in data structure, and obviously it is an open source language. All right. So these were the these were the benefits of Python. And now let's move on to the next question, which is how Python is interpreted. Very important question here. So the idea is that Python language is an interpreted language. All right. A Python program runs directly from the source code. It converts the source code that is written by the programmer into an intermediate language, which is again translated into machine language, which has to be executed, obviously. So that's how Python is interpreted, basically. All right. So let's move on to the next question, which is what do you know about local and global variables in Python? All right. So if we talk about global variables, so the variables that are declared outside a function or in global space are called basically global variables. These variables, basically, they can be accessed by any function in the program. And if you talk about local variables, these are the kind of variables that are declared inside a function, and they are known as local variable. Okay. So this variable, basically, if you talk about the local variable, it is present in the local space and not in the global space, which means that you cannot use it globally, and you can only use it locally. For example, if that local variable is called inside the function, then you can only use it inside the function and not outside that function's body. All right. While if you talk about the global variable, you can use it inside the function and outside the function as well, because it is basically declared as global variable. Okay. So let's go ahead and let's try to do some example in the Python code format. So first of all, we'd open up our terminal, we'd press Ctrl Alt T. We zoom in a little bit. So the idea is that you have to have Python installed on your system, and the way to check it is that you go here, you write here Python and then -- version. You can see that I have Python 2.7.16 installed on my system. If you don't have Python installed, just write this simple command. First of all, you would write sudo apt get update. All right. You would update the repository. Make sure you update it, because if you won't update it, maybe it would give you some sort of error. All right. So I put in my password and it would basically update my repository. So once my repository, it would be updated, after that I can easily install Python. All right. So in order to install Python, you have to write a very simple command. So in order to install Python, what you're gonna do, you're gonna write here sudo apt get install Python. All right. So this is the simple command that you're gonna write. And when you would hit enter, it would basically ask you if you want to install or not. So in that case, if you want to install, just press Y and then hit enter, and it would install it. Okay, so I already have Python, so I don't need to install it again. So now in order to create a basic script, you just have to go to your text editor or your favorite editor, whatever it is. Open it up and just save it as with the Python extension, which is essentially .py. Okay, the name could be anything. So let's say I call it demo.py. All right, so this is basically a Python script. We know it by this extension, which is essentially demo.py. all right, so I save it, and now I try to write code inside of it. Okay, so first of all, let's say I write here x equals 3, and then I write here the function. Okay, let's say I'm having this function of sum or addition or whatever, and I'm gonna have a semicolon here, and then I define a local variable, let's call it y, and it is 5. And after that I basically create another variable which is essentially z or z, and basically what I do now that I sum it, okay, x plus y. Okay, and now what I do, I basically print and print z, and then I would come here, and now I would basically call the function which is essentially sum. Okay, so now we have this. All right, we don't need to have semicolon here because we are not defining a function. So now if we save it, you can see that the colors have changed, right? If you're able to see here. So now if we go back into our Python, so the idea is that if you're going to run your script, you need to make sure that you're in the same directory where your file is stored. So if we go here, our file is stored in our I guess home folder. Yes, here demo.py, and obviously right now we are in our home directory. If we do that, this is our present directory. Okay, so Linux Center is the user, and obviously that's the user currently that I'm logged in with, and home is the directory. So now if I want to run this script, well, all I have to do, I have to write here Python, then space, and then demo.py. okay, so you can see that it is basically giving us an indentation error. So the indentation error has to be resolved something like this. All right, because that is inside the body of the function. So if we save it now, we go back, we write here Python demo.py. You can see that it is giving some sort of error that y is not defined, because y is inside the territory of the function and we are trying to use it outside the territory of the function. All right, so that's why this is a local variable and we cannot use it. So if we talk about global variables, so let's say if we make this the body of the function as well, and if we call this function later on, now what would happen, it would print it very easily because y is the local variable and it is being used inside the function. Also, x is a global variable, so you can use it anywhere, it won't make any difference. Okay, so right now we are using the x inside the function's body and it is totally fine, and this time we would get the result. So if we go ahead and we run the same command, you can see that we have got the result 8. All right, so I hope you have got the point if we talk about the difference between global and local variables. Okay, so local variables, you cannot access it outside the local body. In our case it was the function's body, and global variable, you can access it anywhere inside any function. All right, so I hope you have got the point. So now let's move on to the next question, which is very important one, that explain the difference between arrays and lists in Python. So if we talk about arrays and lists in Python, they're both basically, they have the same way of storing data. Okay, there is not much difference, but arrays basically they can hold only a single data type elements, and if we talk about lists, they can hold multiple data type elements. Okay, or any data type elements as well. Okay, so let me go ahead and let me show you that how what I'm saying is true. So first of all, let's say that if we talk about the array, so let me go ahead, let me just remove it. So first of all, I would basically write here import array as ARR, and let's say that I have here the variable named as my array. Okay, or my array Python. It's gonna be a long name, so let's say my array p, and then I would write here equals arr dot array, and inside here now this is a list obviously, right? So now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to basically give it one sort of value, and that would be basically the integers. All right, so if we go here and if we basically try to have here I, and then I'm gonna put here comma, and then I'm gonna basically give it values like 1, 2, 3, 4. And if I come to the next line, and now if I try to have here the list, so let's say I have here my list p, I put an equal sign here, and in here what I'm going to do that I'm going to have, let's say, different sort of data types. So let's say here I have integer, and here I have any string, let's call it Python, and here I have, let's say, any float number. Okay, so these are like different data types right now, if you could see, right? So now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to print both of them, and let's see what happens. So if I would write here print, and then I'm going to write here my array p, and then I'm going to write here print and my list p. All right, so I would save it basically, and then I would go to my terminal and I would try to run my Python script again. Okay, so if I hit enter, you can see that basically here I have multiple data types with the help of lists, while in the case of array I have only one kind of data type. All right, so I hope you have got the point. So now let's move on to the next question. The next question is very important one, and that is basically explain functions in Python. All right, so this question is basically, I think it is related to question number 3, in which we basically did an example in which we created a function. But if you don't know what a function is, in this question we'll basically explain it to you. All right, so a function, basically, if we talk about function, it is a block of code which is executed only when it is called. Okay, so the idea is that when you want to use, let's say you want to use 1,000 lines of code in your program, okay, multiple times, so what would you do? You cannot really write all those, all that 1,000 lines again and again, because in that case your code would be bad in terms of quality, right? So what you are supposed to do is that you are going to do very simple thing. Okay, you're going to create a function and you're going to put those 1,000 lines in that one function, and then wherever you need those 1,000 lines, you don't need to copy them all. You just write the function name, or you basically call the function there wherever you need it. So if, let's say you need it like you need 7 times those 1,000 lines. Okay, so you don't need to write other 7,000 extra lines. All you have to do is just you have to write 7 lines. All right, you would just basically call that function 7 times wherever it is required. So in that way your code would be way better in terms of quality. Okay, so that's it for this question, but we can do an example here as well. So the idea is that in Python, basically when you try to create a function, you use the keyword which is define, okay, or def. Okay, so let me just remove it and let me just write here the code which is def, and now I'm gonna write here the function name. Okay, so let's call it funcs. Okay, and then you're gonna put here colons. All right, and after that you're gonna give a slight space so that you can basically indent your code. Okay, and here you can print anything. So let's say I print here hello world. All right, hello world, and let's say I call this function hello function. Okay, So now if I want to call this function, all I have to do, let's say if we talk about this function, these two lines would do nothing. Okay, this is a function, but until and unless you won't call this function, these lines, this one line would not be executed, especially that print statement. Okay, so if you want to make sure, you can check it. If I control S right here, I go ahead, I try to run my script, Python script, you can see that I have no answer, right? Because this code is doing nothing. We have not called the function yet. So when you would call the function, only then this thing would work. Okay, so I would write here hello function, and that is how you basically call it. Okay, and yeah, that's it. So now what you would do, you would basically save it, and you would go back here, you would try to run your script, and you can see that we have hello world. Okay, you can basically, inside this function, you can have as many lines of code as you want. So for example, if I want to have here more lines, like print hello world, print hello, print hello anyone. So if I call this function, I have called this function already, right? So if I save it, I go ahead, I try to run my script, you can see that all these lines have been printed out. So that was the concept of a function basically. So now let's move on to the next important question, which is essentially explain Lambda function in Python. Okay, that function is basically a sort of an anonymous function, which is known as Lambda function. Okay, so the idea is that this function, it can have numbers of parameters, but it can have only one statement. Okay, it has as many parameters or arguments as it can, but it would have just one statement. Okay, that's how it works, right? So let's go ahead and let's try to write this function. Okay, so now let's do our code. So first of all, we're gonna have here our variable z, let's say, and then we're gonna have here our function lambda. And after that, what we're gonna do is that we're gonna have here our variables, which are essentially a and b, let's say, and we have our colon, and then we have, let's say, we multiply this a with b. Okay, so after multiplication, now what we do, that we need to give two arguments, right? So here we have a and b. So what we would do, we would come here and would basically print out here, print, and then basically z. All right, and after that we'd pass two arguments from z, let's say 6 multiplied by 6, or maybe 6 multiplied by 10. Okay, so these are the two arguments. 6 would be stored in a, and the 10 would be stored in b, and they both would basically perform the multiplication as we have multiplication here. Okay, so now what we would do would basically save it, we'd go into our terminal and we just clear it, and we try to run our script, and you can see that answer is 60 right here. Okay, why it is 60? Because 6 multiplied by 10 is it results in 60. Okay, I hope you've got the point. So that was very simple, yet it was very important. Okay, so I'm making it simple for you, but maybe the same question could be asked in a difficult way as well. Okay, so for your understanding, I've kept it simple. I've given you a very simple example, but in your case, you could, obviously you are a programmer, you're a developer, so you could be asked very like the same concept but in a different or difficult way. Okay, so my job is to make you understand the basic concept, so you understand it, you can do many complicated things by yourself. Okay, so now let's go ahead and let's do another example, which is how would you generate random numbers in Python. Okay, so that is a very important question, and a lot of times you are asked that, write a program that does this and this, and that involves, almost always they involve random generation of numbers. Okay, So we'd go ahead and we'd do an example. I'll show you that how you can generate random numbers in Python. So I'll make that very simple for you as well. So let's go ahead and let's try to write a code here. So let's say that we write here import random, and then we write here a for loop, and then we write here for I in range, and inside of that, whatever number you would write, that many random numbers would be generated. So let's say we want to generate 5 random numbers, and if you want to print it, how would you do that? You'd write here just simply print, and before that you would write here the function, which is essentially random. So print, and then you would write here random dot random integer. You want to basically generate the integer, okay? And now basically if you would write here 1 comma let's say 25, so now what it would do, it would basically generate the random numbers from 1 till 24, okay? 25 is not included. All right, so you need to make sure that whatever number you're putting here, the limit of the random numbers would be 1 less than it, okay? So it would generate 5 numbers under 25, okay, till 24 from 1, okay? And also what you need to do is that you need to put a colon here as well. I forgot to put it here, so make sure you have it because it would cause a syntax error. So now if we save it, we go back and we try to run our script, the Python script. So you can see that it has basically generated 5 random numbers, which are like 20, 11, 5, 18 and 22, okay? So that's how you basically generate random numbers in Python. You can put on your own formula. For example, you can divide these random numbers by 4, 5 or whatever number you want. You can multiply it and you can do whatever you want. It depends upon your logic, okay? So basically you know how to generate random numbers in Python now, at least, okay? So now let's go ahead and let's move on to the next question, which is talk about comments in Python, okay? So if we talk about comments in Python, so the idea is that comments in Python, you can start with them with hash character, okay? Also, alternatively, what you can do is that you can basically use the doc strings, in which the strings are enclosed in the triple comments, okay? So if you have triple comments, you can actually comment that specific line, okay? So let me just show you a very simple thing. So let's just say that we have here any line, okay? So if we want to comment it, or let me just write it in a better way. So I say hello, this is what? So you know, this is just a random line, and obviously you know that if you would run this script, it would cause an error, right? So if you just put here hash, it would be commented and it would have no impact on the code, okay? So let's write here some meaningful comment. Let's say this is a random number generation code, okay? So you can see that it is fairly simple, it is very simple, and that's how you basically comment in Python, I would say, okay? So now let's move on to the next very important question, that how would you convert the string to all lowercase? So the idea is that you can convert the string to lowercase by using the lower function, okay? So let's go ahead and let's try to do it. So what we would do, would go to our here where we have written our script. So here what we would do would basically define a string here with all capital letters. So we'd say cap string or cap st, okay? And then we'd put here the equal sign, and inside here we can have all capital letters. So let's say I write here capital letters, okay? So you can see that here we have this string, and we want to convert it to the lowercase or all lowercase. So what we would do, would just simply write here print, and let's say first of all we basically try to print it without converting to the lowercase, and after that we try to convert it, right? So we'd write here print again, and now we'd write here CAPST, and then we write here dot and then we write here lower, okay, and then we basically write here brackets, which would basically call the function, okay. So we'll just save it, and now you can see that let me define first that lower is a built-in function, okay. So you're not basically generating it somewhere else, rather it is already present and Python has it, Python owns it, so that is built in. So we just go ahead and we try to run our script. So you can see that first of all we have capital letters, all of them, and after that we have basically converted all of them into small letters, all lowercase, using, I repeat, using this lower built-in function, okay. So I hope you have got the point. So that's how easy it was to convert all the functions, all the string letters to the lowercase, okay, all the capital string letters to the lowercase strings letter, okay. So let's move on to the next question, which is that what is this length function for, okay. So that is a very important question too. Interviewer could ask this simple question, yet it is technical, and you know, interviewers could say try to write an example in which you would use the length function, okay. So basically this length function, it is used to determine the length of a string, okay. So it can also be used to predict the length of the, not actually predict would be the wrong word, it can also be used to determine the length of the list, and it can also be used to determine the length of the array as well, okay. So if you remember that if you have done Java programming, in that you would have array.length, that is the built-in function that you would call, and then you'd get the length of an array, okay. So that is basically a simple and similar thing. So what we can do is that we can use this same code, and in here what we can do is that we can use the len function, and inside that len function we basically pass this capst variable, okay. So now if we go ahead and we try to run our script, you can see that we don't have any result because we didn't basically print it out, right? So what we would do would just simply write here print, or we can basically store this inside a variable, and then we can print out that variable as well. So we would save it, we go ahead, we try to run it, and you can see that the result is 15, okay. So let's just manually count it as well. So this is like 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13 14 15, okay. So it has counted this space as a character as well, okay. So I hope you've got the point. So now let's move on to the next interview important question, which is how would you add value to an array in Python. So if you want to add values to the array, there are different built-in functions. So the elements, basically they can be added to the array, or the values can be added to the array using append function, insert function, and the extend function, okay. So let me show you that how you can actually add different sort of values to the array. So let's say we have here 1 2 3 and then we have here comma 4, so things like this, all right. And next thing that we have here, let's try to append something to this array. So let's say that if I want to append it into x, what I would do, I would write here x append, and then I would write here let's say 5, okay. So now what it would do, it would basically append into the array. Append means that it would basically add it in at the end of the last array value. Okay, so if I basically try to print it right here, something that I'm gonna write here, import ARR as array, or I think it was import array as ARR. Okay, so now if we save it, we go ahead, we try to run our script. Now you can see that the value has been appended successfully at the end of this array. Okay, so you can see that 5 is not here inside the definition of the array, but when we print it out, we have 5 there, which means that we have appended it successfully. Okay, you can also basically add or extend the array as well. Using basically the extend function, you can add multiple values. So let's say we come here and we write here x dot extend, and here we have multiple values, like let's say 5 comma let's say 6 comma let's say 7 comma let's say 8. Okay, so we save it and we come here and we run it, and now you can see that we have 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. Okay, so that's how, that is another way to add values inside array as well. Okay, so if you want to basically insert the value at a specific point, let's say, in that case what you would do, first of all you're going to write the position, and then second of all you're going to basically write the value that you want to insert at that specific position. Okay, so for that what you would do, you would write here x insert, and now you're going to write here the index on which you want to add the value. So let's say I want to add the value on the second index, and I want to insert, let's say 15. Okay, so now if I save it, I go ahead, and if I try to run my script, you can see that I have 1 2 15, then 3, and then 4. So you can see that here we have the second index. So the idea is that array always starts from 0. Okay, so 0, then it has 1, then it has 2, and then it has 3. Okay, so we have used this index, so it means that the 15 would be inserted 0 1 2, so that would be inserted after 2 and before 3. Okay, between them. All right, and as we can see on the output, we have it between 2 and 3. All right, so I hope you have got the point. So these were the 3 ways to add values inside the array. Okay, so now let's move on to the next important question, which is very important, and that is basically question number 12. Okay, so it says that what is pickling and unpickling in Python. So if we talk about pickling, it is basically taking a Python object and basically converting it into a string sort of representation. Okay, and then basically obviously you can, or it can dump this into the file. Okay, using the dump function. This sort of process is called pickling, you know, converting the object into a string representation. Okay, so the process in which you basically retrieve the original Python object from the representation of the string, the representation of the string which has been stored, that is basically called unpickling. Okay, so I hope you've got the point. So that was basically pickling and unpickling. So now let's go ahead and let's move on to the next question, which is question number 13, and that is, what is the difference between list and tuple? So the idea is that if you talk about list, then list is basically mutable, and if you talk about tuple, it is not mutable. So you can say, what is mutable? So mutable means that a thing that can be changed, or that can be modified. So I think you might have heard the terms mutable functions and immutable functions. So that is basically the same concept. Okay, so in the same way as I have told you that the list is mutable, which means that it can be modified, while a tuple in Python, it cannot be modified. Okay, so that is the simple explanation. That is the simple main basic difference between list and tuple. Okay, so last but not the least, very important question, that how to delete a file in Python. So in order to delete the file, you need to make sure that you are in the same directory. You're writing the Python script in the same directory where the file is, or you can basically manually give the path of the file and you can delete that as well. Okay, so here let's say that let me just go ahead in the home directory and let me see here that which files do we have. So let's say that here I'm going to have a new text file. Let's say I'm gonna save it here in the home directory and I call it, let's say, a.text. Okay, so this is the file that I have saved, and if I want to delete it, what I would do, I would just simply write here a very simple code. So I would write here import OS. OS is basically a file, a built-in function or built-in library, you can say, that you would call, and then you would write here os.remove, and inside of that you would basically write the name of the file if the script is in the same folder. Okay, and if the script is not in the same folder, then in that case what you would do, you would just simply write here the the name of the file as it is. So the name of the file is a.text right here. So if I save it and I go ahead and I clear it, and if I ls here, you can see that we have here this a.text. Okay, and if I run my script like python demo.py, I hit enter, and if I ls here, you can see that there is no a.text file here because it has been deleted. Okay, so if you go here, you can see here there is no a.text file. So that's how you basically delete the Python file in Python. Okay, so I hope you have enjoyed this video. You have learned something new. For written articles, you can visit our website linuxhen.com for such cool videos. Keep coming on to our channel. Okay, subscribe to this channel. We are going to put a lot of free content out there, and we'll see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching.